Being on the road for an extended amount of time has a funny way of making the mind wonder. In so many ways, it forces you to revisit experiences and internal battles that you thought you had repressed. With 5,000 miles of driving and 80 hours on the road, you're presented with the task of dealing with yourself. On this journey across what felt like 70 states, I was reminded of an old proverb that was once told to me by an elder. Sometimes it is, and sometimes it ain't. Summer seems to hold some of my fondest memories. I was a child of the sun. I was born on a humid summer morning in August of 1990. Mama tells me stories about the morning I made my way back onto this earthly realm. She would tell me that I kept trying to come here before my due date. The doctors had to keep giving her medicine to keep her from going into labor. The heat brought you here, she'd say. It just so happens that this journey across the states was made on the week of my 30th birthday. We began this journey in Florida, making our way through Georgia, Alabama, and Mississippi, passing through places surrounded by a thickness of trees, marsh, and swamp, crossing over bridges of lakes, rivers, and creeks. After an eventful night in New Orleans, we made our way through the bayous of Louisiana and the city lights of downtown Houston. As we drove west, we witnessed the landscape shape-shift from lush greenery to dry textures. By daybreak, we were greeted by the mountains and the valleys of Texas. The air was cool and the skies were painted gray, with specks of blue making an appearance here and there. A roadside stretch break with the cattle helped ground us after driving overnight. The air was not as humid, and since it was still early morning in the desert, there was a coolness present. We stopped for some coffee at this cliche-looking diner. You know, the ones you see on scary movies in the middle of the desert. Ends up that it wasn't scary at all. The owner even gave us the coffee on the house. Time moved on, and we had finally moved through the never-ending state of Texas and entered New Mexico. Shaka Khan's Through the Fire was blasted as we took turns singing lead. We pulled over for a celebratory toast of red wine, which is similar to the air in New Mexico, hot and dry. By noon, we were in White Sands. I had never seen a terrain so ethereal. The sand looked like snow, and the dunes seemed to never end. It was at the top of these dunes that a panic attack was triggered inside of me, and at the same time, a sandstorm had ignited. Inner and outer turbulence, manifesting all at the same time. How ironic. But with some consoling, support, and much-needed laughter, we were both able to get through the sandstorm and panic attack with grace. There were moments while driving through the mountains at night that I found myself hallucinating due to the lack of sleep, letting the windows down at times to give me an instant burst of energy. The mountains looked like pyramids and the deer looked like coyote. We spent the night in Phoenix, As I decompressed, I couldn't help but wonder if what I had experienced at the dunes was just a mere coincidence, or if it was my discernment and spirit preparing me for a major shift ahead. The next day felt like a fresh start. We grabbed In-N-Out Burger, a bottle of Jameson whiskey, and headed towards California. I can remember looking at the temperature on the dashboard of the truck. 119 degrees. I could feel that heat through the bottom of my shoes. There was a weather advisory out for the heat. Wildfires were growing and we were traveling right through them. Once again, my internal conflicts were manifesting in nature. We entered California, finally, and pulled over at the Welcome to California sign to take one of those cliche road trip photos. We made our way through Coachella Valley, where we were surrounded by windmills and all the sun that you could ask for. Finally, in Joshua Tree, this was home for the week, and I was overjoyed. The days here were slow and quiet. The sun rising in the east was my alarm clock, boasting cotton candy hues of baby blues and tangerine dreams. After coffee and hours listening to old records, I'd sit outside and watch the hummingbirds and rabbits entertain each other. Observing the Joshua trees surrounding the home, I imagined Dr. Seuss stepping in and drawing them himself. Most moments I was in a daze, resting my body and taking it all in. There was a familiar uneasiness that I was experiencing. Although I had everything I had wanted in the moment, there was a knowing that I would be losing something soon. I thought that maybe I was grieving the ascension of my grandmother, whose journey ended a few months prior on Mother's Day. And although I still was coming to terms with her death, I still couldn't put my finger on what was bothering me. An unforeseen thunderstorm rolled in. I could feel and smell the rain before a cloud was ever in sight. Tony's It Never Rains in Southern California played in my head. The unexpected shower left the valley feeling cool. The scent of fresh rain was just as healing as the sweet smells of myrrh resin. We drove up to Keys View, over 5,000 feet in elevation. In the distance, you could even see Mexico. The energy was serene. There were bees, and lots of them. The sun began to set behind those huge rock boulders. For a moment, I felt like I was in an episode of the Flintstones. On our return, we chose an alternate route to get us back to the East Coast. We made stops in Albuquerque, Santa Fe, the Grand Canyon, Oklahoma City, and even in the sacred healing waters of Little Niagara Falls. This felt like a bittersweet goodbye. The entire trip, I had felt a shift taking place, and I was finally seeing the ugly truth for what it was. And just like that, what I thought was no longer. This trip had been a reminder that in order for me to welcome in love, I had to love myself first. I had been giving life to my past, allowing my traumas to be my truth. For years, like a creature of habit, I held on to things and people due to my fear of losing them. I found myself in abusive relations and situations because I had been in a long-term abusive relationship with myself. What I learned was that true acceptance and validation starts with self. Something deep inside of me died after this journey. I was mourning the expiration of something with someone that would eventually usher me to the most joyous eras of my life. Life is funny that way. The love and compassion that I was so desperately looking for in others was in me the whole time. And it took this experience for me to come to this realization that there was healing in letting go. As I waded through these cool spring waters, I couldn't help but think that it was the heat that brought me here. Just as the heat brought me during my birth 30 years prior. I could hear the words of my mama echoing in my head. The heat brought you here. This was my moment. A deeply divine reminder to acknowledge myself, to accept myself, to truly love myself. This was my rebirth.